Harry and Rosie take a train. And Harry and Rosie had the week off school. Their mum and dad had booked a holiday cottage for them down in Cornwall, which, in case you don't happen to know, is in the far west of England. It's very nice, with lots of hills and coastline, and there used to be lots of pirates there in the olden days. So Harry and Rosie were really, really excited. Rosie planned to build the biggest sandcastle ever, and Harry thought he might join a pirate ship if he could find one, and had been practicing going swish, swish with his sword just in case. When the day arrived, they all went to the station and waited for the train that would take them to Cornwall. "I really like Cornwall," said Rosie, as the family had a cup of tea and some sandwiches in the cafe. And Harry laughed and laughed. "We're not in Cornwall yet, stupid," he squeaked. "This is just Paddington Station." Rosie started to cry. "Being horrid," she screamed. "Not," snapped Harry. "Ah!" wailed Rosie. Now," said Dad, looking up from his newspaper. "The holiday hasn't even started yet. Let's save the arguments for day 2 at least." Quite soon afterwards, the train was ready, and they all settled into their seats, and the train started its long journey towards Cornwall. They played some card games and 20 questions and I Spy, and after a while they were all having a snooze. Harry was just in the middle of a brilliant dream in which he became a ferocious pirate captain with his own ship, when he could feel someone tugging at his sleeve. "What is it?" he said, opening his eyes. "I'm hungry," said Rosie. "Funny," said Harry. "Now you come to mention it, I'm a bit peckish as well." They looked out of the window and could see the countryside streaming past. Mum and Dad were fast asleep, and they were getting hungrier and hungrier and hungrier. "Come on," said Rosie. "Let's see if there's a buffet car in this train." Harry looked a bit nervous. He wasn't sure that they should leave Mum and Dad, but they had £4 in pocket money saved up, and he definitely was a bit peckish, and anyway, it'd be quite exciting to explore the train. Harry and Rosie started to walk along the train. It was very fast and a bit wobbly when they went through the carriages, and they went through 1, 2, then 3 different doors. Rosie loved pressing the buttons and making the doors open and close, and Harry had to hurry her along. Eventually they reached the buffet car. "We'd like a snack, please," said Rosie, looking up. "We're really hungry." The buffet lady looked around. "What's that noise?" she said. "It's us," said Harry, tugging at her sleeve. "What do you want then?" she said, looking down. "A snack," squealed Rosie. "Well, we're closed," said the lady. "Until lunchtime. If you come back in an hour, we can give you an executive traveller lunchbox. Until then, nothing." "But we're hungry now," squealed Rosie. "Well, that's just bad luck," said the lady, slamming the door shut. "You should have had some more breakfast." Both Harry and Rosie felt a bit sad. "Maybe we better go back to Mum and Dad," said Harry. "No, look," said Rosie excitedly. "A station!" And sure enough, the train was pulling into a station, and right there in front of them on the platform was a big sign saying "Snack Shop." "I know what we can do," said Rosie. "We can hop off the train, buy some chocolate bars, some crisps, some chews, and some fizzy lemonade, and then get back on board again." "I don't know," said Harry cautiously. "I mean, what if—" "Oh, come on, Harry," said Rosie, tugging at his sleeve. The door was already open, and several people were getting down their suitcases and climbing off the train. "Quick, quick," said Rosie, slipping underneath the suitcase and jumping down onto the platform. The snack bar was just a few feet away. There were lots of people on the platform. It was very noisy, but they managed to push their way up to the counter. "I'd like 6 packets of crisps and 8 choco bars and 22 snacks of chewy sweets and some fizzy lemonade, please, and a Pink Princess magazine," said Rosie. "And I'll have the same," said Harry, "except I don't want the stupid magazine." "What flavour crisps?" said the lady behind the counter. "All the flavours you have," said Harry. The woman started to count out the order, gather everything they had asked for, and putting it into a bag. It seemed like an awful lot of crisps to Harry, but that was okay, because they were his favourite thing. "Shall we get some for Mum and Dad?" said Harry. "Some low-fat organic choco bars for my mum, please," said Rosie. "And another 5 packets of crisps for Dad." "That will be £22.53, said the lady, handing across a big bag of snacks. Harry and Rosie started to count their money. "I've got £4, said Harry. "And I've got £4, said Rosie. "So that makes £9. £8, stupid, said Harry. He started to search around in his pocket, but could only find half a football sticker and an old boiled sweet. And Rosie searched around in her pockets, but could only find a small toy kitten and a shell she'd collected from the beach. "Well, if you haven't got enough money, you'll just have to buy a bit less stuff," said the lady. "But I want everything," wailed Rosie. "I'm really hungry and really starving." "And really stupid as well if you think you can buy all that for £8, said the lady. Rosie cried and cried. "Come on, Rosie," said Harry. "We better put something back." So Rosie and Harry took out some packets of crisps and some choco bars and some chewy sweets and handed the bag back to the lady. "That will be £12.10, said the lady. Rosie screamed and stamped her foot. "You're being horrid to me," she screamed. Just then Harry heard the whistle blow. He looked around and he could see the doors being slammed shut on the train. "Quick, Rosie," said Harry, tugging at his sister's arm. "The train is going to go." But Rosie was trying to figure out which of the 2 choco bars she could buy and still bring the total only down to £8. "There's no time," shouted Harry. He took the bag, gave the money to the lady, and started to run. Rosie ran after him. But it was too late. "Oh no," cried Harry. "Oh no," cried Rosie. They sat down on a bench. "We'll never see Mum and Dad again," said Harry. And Rosie started to cry. And cry, and cry. Just then the station master stopped by. "What's the matter with you children?" he said. Rosie was so upset she couldn't say anything. "We've missed the train and our parents are on it," said Harry. "We just hopped off to get some snacks and... "That's very stupid," said the station master. "Can you stop the train?" asked Harry hopefully. The station master rolled his eyes. "Stop the train? That's a good one," he said. "I can't go around stopping trains because a couple of kids want to get back on. I've got a customer satisfaction performance target to meet, young man." "But I'm a customer," said Harry, "and I'd be more satisfied if I got back to Mum and Dad." "You're a troublemaker, you are, lad," growled the station master. Just then, Harry could see the train slowing down and then coming to a halt. Just one last carriage was next to the end of the platform. "Quick, Rosie, run!" shouted Harry. Rosie gave the station master a quick kick in the shins. "You're a horrid man," she squealed. Then she ran after Harry. Harry grabbed hold of the door and managed to open it. He pulled Rosie up behind him and then they hopped on board. Harry and Rosie walked back down the carriages, and when they got back to Mum and Dad, They were just waking up from their nap. A voice over the loudspeaker on the platform was apologising for the delay due to a railway signal that was not working. That was why the train had stopped. Dad tapped his watch and looked grumpy. "Where have you kids been?" asked Mum. "Oh, just getting some snacks," said Harry casually. "Funny," said Mum. "I thought the buffet car wasn't open until lunchtime." Harry and Rosie didn't say anything. They just shared out the snacks. "I could use a coffee," said Dad, looking at Harry and Rosie. "Here's some money. Why don't you kids go off to the buffet car and get me one? And get some biscuits for yourself." Harry yawned. "Actually, Dad, I'm a bit sleepy," he said. "Me too," said Rosie. "That's odd," said Dad. "I've never known those children to turn down a snack before." Bertie's summer holiday. It all started a few weeks ago. It was a really, really hot day, and all the pond life was sitting out by the water enjoying the sunshine. Well, all except Colin the carp, who was moaning that the water was starting to feel more like a hot bath than a pond. Then all of a sudden there was a strong gust of wind, and a newspaper that had been carried on the air landed on the lawn. "Oh my," sighed Sadie the swan. "There's a picture of the lovely Princess Beatrice on the front page. Isn't she just wonderful?" "What does the newspaper say about her, Bertie?" Now, as you probably know, Bertie used to be a prince and was engaged to be married to Beatrice, who he thought was the most beautiful, sweetest princess in all the world. But her wicked stepmother didn't like Bertie much, so she had turned him into a frog, and now he sits on the pond listening to stories on his iPod. He still loves Princess Beatrice, though, and won't hear a word said against her. As it happens, he is the only creature on the pond who knows how to read. And so he spelled out the headline for Sadie and the others. It read, "Princess Greedy Guts." Prince Bertie held up the picture, and he was so angry his face went bright red. Well, sort of a greenish red, actually, because he is a frog. The picture showed the lovely Princess Beatrice wearing a yellow bikini and licking a double ice cream with a chocolate flake while holding a hot dog in her other hand. Underneath the picture, the newspaper read, "Since the strange disappearance of her husband-to-be, the less than intellectual Prince Bertie, the lovely Princess Beatrice has taken to stuffing her face with nosh all day long." Turn to pages 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 for our exclusive pictures of Princess Fatty on the beach. See our close-ups of her horrible acne. I spluttered Bertie. He had never been so angry in his entire life. How dare they make up these filthy fibs? Beatrice is the most lovely, charming, sweetest creature who ever lived. "She's a fatty," snarled Colin. "Just like you." With that, Colin dived straight down to the bottom of the pond so that Bertie couldn't thump him, which is what he usually did when Colin said something horrible. Bertie turned to the newspaper's opinion page. There he read that the royal family was lounging around in the sun, enjoying itself, while the rest of the kingdom was going to the dogs. "Why do we need the royal layabouts?" it asked. Isn't it time for a republic? Sadie hissed her disapproval. All the pond life know that she is an ardent royalist. She was so indignant that some of her beautiful black feathers turned quite white.
"What's a republic?"
asked Tim. It's a very silly kind of country, snooted Bertie. Without kings or queens or...
"A princess?"
ventured Tim, slightly timidly, because he could see Bertie was quite upset. It's clear what must be done, declared Bertie. I am a royal prince, and Beatrice is my princess. I shall go and defend her. But first, he needed a plan. You see, Beatrice and the royal family had all gone on holiday on the royal yacht, which was moored in the south of France. And Bertie was only a frog, so he didn't have any way of getting there, until Tim the Tadpole came up with a rather clever idea.
"Bertie, why don't you post yourself to France?" he said.
He's too fat, gurgled Colin the Carp, still hiding in some mud so that Bertie couldn't thump him. Now, using the post seemed like a very good idea. Surprising, really, when you think that Tim, who is a very silly tadpole, thought it up. Sadie the Swan noticed a Federal Express box near the palace doors, which was being used to courier the king's favourite food across to France, Marmite, since, as everyone knows, you can't get Marmite in France. So that night, Sadie and Bertie crept across to the palace. They opened the box, and Bertie hopped inside, squeezing in between 2 jars of Marmite and a cream egg that had been packed for Beatrice's stepmother. And then Sadie bit an air hole into the box so that Bertie could breathe, and wrapped it up again. "Oh dear, Bertie," said Sadie, "you are so brave and noble. Just the kind of prince a girl wants. Apart from the fact that you are a frog. But never mind that. You're wonderful just the same. Even though you're green and got big bulging eyes. I mean, I'm sure you'll do the royal family proud." In the morning, the courier company arrived and picked up the box. Bertie could feel himself going bump, bump, bump in the van. Then he felt himself going whoosh, 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 as the box was whisked around the airport. Then all of a sudden, there was a huge roaring sound, and Bertie realised that the plane must have taken off. His box was being thrown from side to side, and the cream egg bashed him in the tummy. Bertie felt rather frightened, and was starting to wonder if it really mattered if all the papers were a bit horrid about Princess Beatrice. After all, it was only words. After a while, the plane stabilised, and Bertie began to feel a bit peckish. He opened a jar of the Marmite and started to lick the lid. But he had only tasted Marmite on toast before, and he didn't realise quite how horrid it tasted when you ate it on its own. His mouth felt so yucky, so he decided to nibble a bit of the cream egg to take away the taste. It tasted yummy, so he had a bit more, and before he knew it, he had eaten the whole cream egg and was feeling very sleepy, and although he would never admit to Colin the Carp, a bit fat as well. Bertie was halfway through a dream about winning Olympic gold medal for skateboarding, when suddenly he awoke with a start. He could see Princess Beatrice's wicked stepmother peering into the box.
"Somebody's eaten my cream egg," she hissed.
Bertie realised that he must have dozed off, and by now he must be on the royal yacht. He leapt out of the box and hopped across to the far corner of the room. Just then the lovely Princess Beatrice came into the room, looking, to tell you the truth, just a little bit more plump than he remembered, but lovely all the same. Bertie tried to call out to her, but instead of the words, "Beatrice, my love," all that came out of his mouth was one big croak.
"Ah!"
screamed Beatrice. "It's a horrid, horrid green reptile! Yucky!" And she ran out of the room. The wicked stepmother started to walk towards Bertie with a huge fly swatter in her hand, and Bertie's legs started to wobble with fright. There was a nasty, mean, cruel look in her eye, just like when she first turned him into a frog. If anything, she looked even nastier and meaner, and more murderous this time than before. "Croak, croak," he spluttered, quite certain that he had just croaked his last. The wicked stepmother paused.
"Bertie,"
she said, looking him straight in his bulging eye,
"is that you?"
Bertie remained silent. She looked very angry, but then her face twisted into a sort of a smile, although not a very nice one. "Prince Bertie might come in very useful right now. I have a proposition for you, young man. Frog. If I turn you back into a prince, will you deal with all the photographers and journalists who are being beastly to the royal family?" "Croak." "Very well," said the wicked stepmother. "But if you so much as glance at Princess Beatrice, I'll turn you straight back into a frog, and you can hop and croak for the rest of your days." She wagged her finger at Bertie in a menacing sort of a way. "Is that agreed?"
"Do you, Prince Bertie," the frog, "swear not to gawp at my stepdaughter? Cross your heart and hope to die."
"Croak," said Bertie. And then suddenly, with the snap of her wicked fingers, the spell was broken, and Bertie was a prince again. He felt a bit strange at first. His legs were a bit bendy, and he could hardly hop at all. But he could walk and talk again, just like he used to. "It's just marvellous," he said in a croaky voice. "Enough!" shrieked the wicked stepmother crossly. "The top photographers of all the world's most famous newspapers are gathered out there. Now go and deal with a filthy garbage-eating swine like a true prince." Bertie stepped up to the deck of the yacht. It was moored in a big marina with lots of big boats in it, and across on the shore there were dozens of photographers with huge cameras, and they were all pointing straight at the royal yacht. Bertie was wearing the same clothes he had been wearing just before he was turned into a frog, shorts, a t-shirt, and a baseball cap, so he didn't really look like a prince at all. In fact, he looked like a skateboarder, which for Bertie was great, because that was his favourite thing. He strode up onto the deck of the yacht, then walked across the jetty until he was on the pier. He looked across at all the photographers, stopping along the way to buy himself an ice lolly. "I say, chaps," he said, standing right in front of one of the cameramen. "I hear you're all being jolly beastly to the royal family. Well, I think it's, rotten. So just jolly well stop it." Bertie expected the cameramen to fold away their equipment and start going home, but instead they just turned and looked at him. At first they were slightly surprised, and then they started laughing. Then one of them took his ice lolly and started eating it. "Naff off, you big wally," he said. "Ain't you never heard of the freedom of the press? We just doing our democratic duty on behalf of the people." "It'll be a republic soon," said another. "Then there won't be any royals for us to bother." Bertie caught a guilty glimpse of Princess Beatrice up on the deck. He swiftly turned his head away in case the stepmother saw him looking at her. All the photographers rushed forwards and started snapping away. Some of them were laughing, and Bertie could hear one of them saying, "Great stuff. The editor wanted another Princess Fatty spread for the morning, and now we've got everything we need." Bertie was so angry he took a swipe at one of the men, but he ducked, and Bertie fell flat on the ground. The next thing he knew, he was lying on the dock, feeling dizzy, and as he looked up, a camera lens was staring straight at him. "Give us a grin, mate," said the photographer. "We'll use your ugly mug for our next health special. How sitting in the sun too much can turn you into a wally." The photographers headed for the nearest bar. Bertie got up, feeling quite sorry for himself. If he was going to stop them, he realised he would have to come up with a cunning plan. But what? He walked up and down the seafront, eating 3 ice lollies, and thinking, and thinking, and thinking. And then suddenly he had a brainwave. The only thing that would make the photographers go away was an even better story. So Bertie hatched a clever ruse. He went back to the royal yacht and found his old cabin. Sure enough, his royal uniform was still hanging in the cupboard, with white starched cuffs and collars and perfect creases in the trousers. He put it on and admired himself in the mirror. He looked like an admiral, with a peaked cap and gold braid on his shoulders and wrists. But something was missing. He couldn't think what. And then he remembered. His gold sword and scabbard for extra special occasions. He found it leaning in the corner and attached it to his side. Now he looked the perfect picture of a true prince, because when princes are on holiday, they always go around dressed like admirals. Out on the dock, Bertie resisted the temptation to buy another ice lolly. Instead, he started to walk up and down, looking as royal as possible. Some people started to stare, and then a young girl came up to him and said, "Excuse me, sir, are you the handsome Prince Bertie?" "Why, certainly, miss," boomed Bertie. "I'm just on a royal walkabout."
The girl turned around and called to her friends, "Tracy, Sharon, Tish, look who's turned up. It's Prince Bertie." And Tracy, Sharon and Trish ran over to get a better look. Bertie couldn't stop Sharon from throwing her arms around him and kissing him on the lips. It was all he could do to stop his admiral's cap falling off. Soon a crowd of French and English holiday-makers gathered round. The wicked stepmother stood on the deck of the yacht
and called out, "Hurrah for the royal family! Long live Prince Bertie!" And she used a magic spell so it sounded like lots of people were cheering and shouting. A band started to play on the deck of the yacht, and soon people really were shouting nice things about Bertie and the royals. The photographers came out of the bar to see what the noise was about. Soon they were snapping away with their cameras. "Excuse me, sir," said one. "Would you be so kind as to tell the Daily Beast where you have been these past months? Your fans have been sorely missing you since your disappearance." "My dear chap," said Bertie, "you know how I always like to help out the gentlemen of the press, but I'm afraid that on this occasion my lips are sealed. It's a royal secret, you see." The evening editions of the newspapers, not to mention all the news on the internet and the TV, were full of the story of Prince Bertie's remarkable reappearance after months away on a top-secret mission to save civilization. Some editors even wrote that the kingdom was safe in Bertie's hands and begged that he be made joint king right away, and added that the monarchy was just super-duper. A Sunday newspaper prepared an article about the beautiful, curvaceous Princess Beatrice. Even the wicked stepmother had her picture on the cover of a fashion magazine, wearing her most fetching long black evening gown with a diamond-studded tiara in her hair, though some people could not help noticing that her eyes had a strange, eerie glow to them. But before Bertie could see the results of all his cleverness, he slipped away from the crowd and sneaked up the gangplank back into the royal yacht. The wicked stepmother met him and said, "Well, Bertie, that wasn't a bad go, considering that you've never been the brightest bulb in the box." "Well, I think it was rather clever of me," said Bertie proudly. Just then, the Princess Beatrice walked along the opposite deck, looking as sweet and lovely as ever. Bertie just couldn't help turning his eyes to catch a glimpse of her royal loveliness. "That's torn it!" shouted the wicked stepmother, and she frantically waved her arms to cast a wicked spell. In the next instant, before Beatrice could catch sight of him, poor old Bertie was a frog once again. "Croak," he said rather sadly. "You can't say I didn't warn you," snapped back the wicked stepmother. And with that, she chased Bertie back into the box, slammed down the lid, and marked it to be sent back to the palace pond. But she wasn't that cross with Bertie, really, so she slipped in a cream egg for him to eat, and a copy of the Wizzo Skateboarder magazine to read on the way.